Giving praise to God. I'd like to greet my brothers and sisters in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, sister. You're beautiful also. This is a unique opportunity for us tonight because we have an opportunity to discuss our views with two powerful brothers. And just because you disagree with a brother doesn't necessarily mean he's not a brother. He may not be your brother, but he's still a brother. The uniqueness of this event tonight is because the black community very seldom has an opportunity to discuss its views in public, uncensored. And we have a very unique opportunity inasmuch as we don't have press clubs and we don't have businessmen's forums that sponsor the kind of speakers that are going to be here today. The two views that you will hear this evening are views that represent a significant constituency in America. One constituency is considered a conservative constituency that basically is in the process of a social reconstruction. The other perspective is an awareness constituency that is looking to prevent black genocide. So we bring the two together tonight to discuss the point. Is Hollywood and the media racist towards blacks? We're going to get right into it. I'm going to introduce the first debatant. It's a brother I'm sure that you all are looking forward to meet since he goes by the title Sage of South Central. Brother Larry Elder was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. He attended Brown University and received a BA in political science, then attended the University of Michigan School of Law, where he graduated with a JD in 1977. Brother has a whole page here. I'm not going to read it all. We'll talk about his recent history. Currently, he has a talk show on KBC since March of 1994, The Larry Elder Show. He has tackled significant subjects and has been profiled in 60 Minutes, Geraldo, it's appeared on Oprah, McNeil Lear, Rolanda, Larry King, Hard Copy, CNN News, C-SPAN, The Today Show, Politically Incorrect, Charles Grodin, This Week with David Brentley, and The Late Late Show with Tom Snyder. He is currently in the process of launching a nationally syndicated radio show as well as a nationally syndicated column. And he's in the process of also establishing the Larry Elder Foundation, a nonprofit organization that will contribute to groups and individuals offering non-government self-help solutions to problems of poverty, crime, poor parenting, dependency, and education. Brothers and sisters, I introduce to you our first debatant, Larry Elder. Brother Larry, we'd like to welcome you to South Central. Okay. At this time, we'd like to introduce our second debatant. Brother Stephen Cokley is a nationally renowned artist, activist, researcher, lecturer, with an unrelenting focus on the enemies of the global African community. Brother Cokley, is a former special assistant to the mayor of Chicago and has served on numerous the board of numerous organizations, including the Chicago NACP. He's been a featured lecturer at the University of Minnesota, University of Kansas, UCLA, University of Illinois, Howard University, Hampton University, Morgan State, American, Georgetown, and Notre Dame University, to name a few. Brother Cokley has appeared on CNN Crossfire, Sunday Morning with Charles Quinault, McNair Leo Report, Morton Downey Show, amongst others. He has researched and lectured a wide spectrum of topics, such as secret societies, the New World Orders, political assassination, the centralization of world power, and crisis on black leadership. We'd like to introduce you, live and uncensored, Brother Steve Cokley. And to show that I'm an unbiased moderator, I'd also like to welcome Brother Steve Cokley to South Central. Okay, brothers and sisters, we have two extremes of free speech today, so we are going to engage in a very structured format so that we don't get carried away and be here all night. Larry might have some place to go, right? All right, we'll have 3 rounds. The first round will be called the opening round, which will be a 30-minute presentation by each debatant. And then we'll have a 15-minute rebuttal round. And then we'll have a Q&A. And each of the debatants will be given a signal by myself at 5 minutes and at 1 minute. And then when time is up, a drum will sound. We had a very diplomatic discussion backstage in terms of who would go first, and Brother Larry volunteered to go first. So at this time, without further ado, I'll introduce to you our first debatant, Brother Larry Elder.
Starting already. Brother Anthony, Mr. Cokley, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me. Appreciate it. You know, David Duke, Jesse Jackson, and Prime Minister Netanyahu were walking down the beach, and they saw a magic lantern. Picked it up, rubbed it, genie came out. Said, gentlemen, one wish, whatever you want. You first, sir. Reverend Jackson said, I want every African-American male, every African-American female, every African-American child to leave America and return to their ancestral homeland, the great continent of Africa. Prime Minister Netanyahu said, I want every Jewish male, every Jewish female, every Jewish child to leave America and return to their ancestral homeland, the great state of Israel. David Duke said, hey, I have a small Coke. The point is that we seem to be searching for that wonderful time, that wonderful day when the clouds open up and the heavens shine and there is no more racism in America. Well, I got news for you. Mark Furman will never dance on Soul Train, and racism will never be completely eradicated in this country or any other country. When you have a country where 10% of the people believe Elvis is still alive, and 7% believe if you send him a letter, he will get it, we got some problems. And we'll always have these kinds of problems. I was talking to a buddy of mine named Carlos. Carlos happens to be Hispanic. Carlos very desperately wants to get into the motion picture business, and he's been pitching a sitcom to a bunch of Hollywood executives, and he hasn't been getting anywhere. So he's talking to me about how much racism there was in Hollywood, how Hispanics were discriminated against. And I told him much of what I'm going to tell you in a few moments. But I said, Carlos, forget about our argument for a moment. Let's talk about the big picture. Can you name me, Carlos, the Japanese-American actor who has been nominated for an Oscar, let alone has won one? He said no. How about a Japanese-American actress? He said no. I said, how about a Chinese-American actor? He said no. How about a Chinese-American actress? He said no. I said, when you look at the groups in this country who are the highest income earning groups in this country, aside from Jews, if you want to categorize them in one category, Japanese Americans and Chinese Americans make more money than anybody else. More money than Americans of English extraction, more money than Americans of Polish extraction, more money than Americans of Italian extraction, of German extraction. So I said, Carlos, the relationship between an image on the screen and success in life is what? Zero. It doesn't mean anything. Now, we can have this debate, I said, Carlos. You obviously want to get into Hollywood, and I understand why you're frustrated. I can talk to you about your frustrations. But if you're telling me that our argument means anything at all in the streets, in day-to-day lives of people, you are flat out dead wrong. What matters is, are you prepared? Did you get an education? Are the quality of your schools excellent? Are you engaging in crime? Are you engaging in drugs? Are the men standing up to their moral and financial responsibility and assuming responsibility for children that they bring into the world? That's what matters. So much of life depends on our attitudes, on whether or not we limit ourselves, on whether or not we perceive ourselves to be victims or victors. I was working out once when I was living in Cleveland, and black man, Locker and I were next to each other. We were getting dressed, ready to go home. We started talking. I'd seen him around, but we never really exchanged anything. And I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I am a computer consultant, and I consult black mayors in Ohio. When they're trying to upgrade their computer systems, they call me, I come in, and I recommend it. He said, what do you do? I said, I place lawyers with law firms and corporations. A corporation or a law firm wants a lawyer with experience, they contact me, I try and find somebody, match them together. He said, oh, I didn't realize that there was an organization that placed minority lawyers. I said, I never said I placed minority lawyers. 98% of the lawyers I place are not minorities, and 100% of my clients are headed up by a CEO or a managing director who is not minority. And he began complaining about his business. He told me that he doesn't make very much money because the government doesn't pay fast, the government doesn't pay competitive free market dollars, and every time the mayor loses an election, he has to start a relationship with a new guy. I said, why are you limiting your business to black mayors? He said, well, I said, why aren't you a computer consultant to anybody who needs your services? When I started my business, I got lots of calls, and I got lots of calls from people to sell me insurance. Probably 20, 30 people came by, just dropped by. Finally, this black guy came by, looked good, sounded good, spoke English. If you ever dealt with a life insurance person, you know what I'm talking about. So we went to lunch. He outlined what he thought I needed. I needed key man insurance, he explained that to me. I needed fire safety, he explained that to me. And I said, I assume you're doing quite well. He said, well, actually, I'm struggling. I said, why? I can't believe it. You're the best life insurance guy who's ever come by. He said, well, you know, black people don't have that much money. I said, your clientele is all black? He said, all but 2 of my customers are black. And he worked for a major insurance company. I won't give you the name. And I said, tell me, did they tell you to target the black market? He said, no. I said, did they imply it? He said, no. I said, did they subtly suggest it? He said, no. I said, you've just now said black people don't have that much money. Why would you target black people when they don't have that much money? 30 other insurance salesmen have come by me to sell me stuff, all of whom were white. They took a look at me and they did not turn around. Why are you doing that? He had no real answer. The reason the young lady just yelled out, is Hollywood and the media racist? The reason I'm starting out this way, and I hope you'll be patient with me, is because this is a larger issue than that. The issue is about, is this country racist? The issue is about whether or not people who are prepared, who have talent, who are willing to work hard can make it in America. That's really what this is about. We could apply this debate to Hollywood. We could apply it to the oil industry. We could apply it to the real estate industry. But unless we have an understanding and an acceptance, and hopefully a sense of hope and optimism, nothing matters. We are constantly worried about what others think of us, to the exclusion of what we think about ourselves. And unless a people has dignity and self-respect and pride, all bets are off. The greatest collegiate football player in America today is somebody named Randy Moss. Many people in this room have probably never heard of him. And the reason you never heard of him is because despite the fact that he was an outstanding high school athlete, broke all kinds of records as a wide receiver, when he was 18 years old and a senior in high school, someone in his class called him a nigger. Randy Moss had been recruited by Notre Dame, by Florida State, by UCLA, and after this kid in his class called him a nigger, Randy Moss beat the crap out of him. Because Randy Moss was 18 years old and therefore was an adult, he was prosecuted and tried and pled guilty to assault. Bye-bye Notre Dame, bye-bye Florida State, bye-bye UCLA. He ended up going to a college in West Virginia that isn't even a top-ranked college, where he is competing against substandard competition. He'll still make it to the NFL. But because he did not compete against top-notch quality competition, because he did not get the exposure on Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7, he will make substantially less money now than he would have had he not beaten the crap out of this guy who probably is working the deep fry at McDonald's as we speak. So what was accomplished here? What was accomplished? What was proven? There is, when I was living in Cleveland, there was a man who wanted to buy the basketball team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. He publicly announced before he purchased the team that when he bought the team, because the team was not doing well financially, he was going to hire more white basketball players. Publicly said this, and proceeded to do just that. And within a few months, the team was an academic, was a athletic disaster. It was a commercial disaster. Lo and behold, he found out that nobody wanted to come to watch a losing team, whether the players were white, black, purple, or green. Marge Schott is the owner of the Cincinnati Reds. Marge Schott is an avowed racist. She collects Nazi memorabilia, swastikas. They have her on tape referring to one of her employees as a nigger. Pick up the newspaper, though, the sports section sometime, and take a look at the roster of the Cincinnati Reds. And it will be chock full of black and Latin ball players. Why? Certainly not because she loves them, certainly not because she cares, but because she has no choice. They're excellent, they're outstanding, and if she's going to win and put booties in the seats, she has to have people who can play. The moral to the story, of course, is that if we empower ourselves, if we are excellent at what we do, if we don't take no for an answer, if we persevere, if we have self-respect, if we have pride, there is no power on earth that can stop us. None. I came here about a year ago, not too long ago, for a panel discussion on how to get into Hollywood. And it was at Leimert Park. Marla Gales put it on. I just came as a member of the audience because I wanted to hear. And there was about 15 people, various positions in Hollywood. 3 or 4 of the panelists were black. Arthur Hiller, who's the head of the Motion Picture Academy, was present, who's also a director. And every single person responded to the question whether blacks were shut out of Hollywood because of racism. And every single person said no. Is Hollywood stupid? Yes. Is Hollywood narrow? Absolutely. Are there some dumb executives who don't get it, who don't understand that a waiting to exhale can make money? Absolutely. Is there nepotism where people hire family members and friends? Unquestionably. Is it difficult to make it in Hollywood if you are an actor, an actress, a director, a producer? Absolutely. It has always been that way. It always will be that way. But cronyism and favoritism and friendship-ism is a far different thing from race-ism. Hollywood is about one thing and one thing only, and it is about money. And if you can put some executive crystal ball in front of him and say, hey, look, this project is called Soul Food. And look in the crystal ball and you'll see 6 months from now, it's going to make you $20 million. He'll greenlight that project yesterday. We all see things, however, through our own prisms, our own experiences. We all have our own ideology. We have our own attitude. Everybody's like that. But let me tell you something. Hollywood consists of roughly 7 major studios and distributors. That's all. Sony, the Bronfman, Universal, Disney, Viacom, and a couple of others. That's it. But that's not unusual. Most businesses are heavily concentrated. The soft drink business has basically 2 players, Coke and Pepsi, 80% of the market. The airline industry has about 6 players, 90% of the market. It's not unusual. Are there very many senior black executives in Hollywood? No, there are not. You can count them on one hand. A lot of them, however, are in entry-level ranks. The most popular and most prosperous and most successful TV director right now is a black man. Disney just had the head of their television division, a black man. They're coming. But let me ask you something. Let's suppose if I could magically transform Michael Eisner into Michael Mustafa. Will the pressures be any different? This is a publicly held corporation, and your job as CEO is to maximize return of equity for your shareholders. That will be the goal and the pressure no matter who is the CEO of Disney. That person must greenlight projects that will make money. And if the American people want big, broad comedies, if the American people want chase scenes, if the American people want thrillers, then that CEO will give it to the American people. Otherwise, that CEO will lose his or her job. Is the media racist? It's difficult to get a film made. Forrest Gump was one of the most popular films ever. Grossed over $600 million. The woman who produced it is married to a Hollywood executive. It took her almost 10 years to get the film off the ground because nobody thought it would make money. Star Wars, the most successful trilogy ever, was turned down by every major studio because nobody thought it would make money. Someone once described Hollywood as a place where executives stand around in a place where lightning once struck, hoping it will strike again. That's narrowness. That's stupidity. That's rigidity. That's playing it safe. But it ain't racism. I'll tell you about Hollywood, and I know a number of people here. I've talked to probably hundreds of people in Hollywood. Let me tell you what the deal is. If you're a Hollywood executive and someone comes to you with a project and you greenlight it and it fails, you're in trouble. You can lose your job. That's why you get Star Wars, Star Wars 2, Star Wars 3, The Son of Star Wars, Star Wars Takes a Bride. However, if you say no, you still get your stock options, you still get your parking space. So the pressure is to do what's worked in the past. The pressure is to do what's safe. The pressure is to do what has made money in the past. The pressure is to hope that lightning strikes twice in the same spot. But that is not racism. It's about attitude. Nowadays, with technology the way it is, you can make a film. You get $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 together, you can make a movie. Technology is such now, it's cheaper than ever. You don't have to have training, you don't have to have background. Spike Lee wrote a movie about his first film, She's Gotta Have It, called The Making of She's Gotta Have It. I recommend that you buy it. Step by step by step, he tells you how to do it. You don't have to go to film school, don't have to know anything about a camera, don't even have to have any money. But you have to persevere. Robert Townsend made Hollywood Shuffle on a credit card. El Mariachi, $30,000. It can be done if you are willing to work hard, if you're willing to suffer rejection, if you persevere, if you have vision, if you have love for what you are trying to pull off, it can be done. And don't let anybody tell you it can't. I'm not here to defend Hollywood. I am most certainly not here to defend the media. I've got my own issues with them. But I will tell you that whatever problems we have, whether we don't like the fact that too much TV news has crime, whether we don't like the fact that not enough emphasis is placed on education, these are matters that have very little to do with racism and everything to do with news directors attempting to put on the screen what they think consumers want. And rightly or wrongly, consumers want what they see on television news. All my life, I've had this almost criminal optimism. I didn't care what happened. The glass was always going to be half full. Quincy Jones. You can't just sit there and wait for people to give you that golden dream. You've got to get out there and make it happen for yourself. Diana Ross. Anger is an emotion that if you carry around for a long period of time, it doesn't allow you to live. John Singleton, director of Boys in the Hood. When you expect good, it's available constantly, and it makes itself a reality in your life. Alfre Woodard. I don't think Hollywood is racist. I think Hollywood lives and dies on greed. Jobs are not given because of race. They're predicated completely on money. Morgan Freeman. Was that Morgan?
That was Miss Daisy.
Let's talk about the media, and let's talk about Hollywood specifically. Newspapers. Obviously an important part of the media. Are newspapers racist? Are newspapers biased? Recent survey by the Gannett Foundation Freedom Forum, a liberal organization, 1992, reporters, 89% of them voted for Bill Clinton. 7% voted for George Bush. 1972, probably the most liberal person ever to run for presidency, George McGovern. 81% of reporters and senior editors voted for George McGovern. Again, probably the most liberal person ever to run for the presidency. 1996, 62% of journalists described themselves as liberal Democrats. A liberal Democrat, as you know, is far more likely to support outreach, far more likely to support race and gender-based preferences, affirmative action. Same thing with editorial writers. 45% describe themselves as liberal and democratic, as against only 23% who describe themselves as leaning the other way. Reporters are, by and large, quite liberal, quite sympathetic to minorities. Indeed, the numbers are now over 10 to 15% of all reporters are persons of color. LA Times in particular, the editor of that paper received an award for diversity because about 20% or more of his staff, people of color. 1994, nearly 40% of all interns in newspapers, people of color. And nearly all major newspapers have recruitment staffs and in-house diversity staffs specifically designed to recruit and hire qualified minority journalists. New York Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, all major newspapers are doing this. Hollywood. A UCLA U.S. News and World Report survey of the top entertainment figures in Hollywood show them to be substantially more likely to be liberal Democrats than the rest of the country. 91% of them are pro-choice on abortion. The charge is made, of course, that Hollywood is controlled by Jews. Let's talk about that. I mentioned the 7 or so major corporations that handle most of the business and distribution in Hollywood. Time Warner, Disney, the Bronfman Company, Rupert Murdoch, Sony, Sumner Redstone of Viacom. There's a book called How the Jews Discovered Hollywood, and there is no question that many of the executives in Hollywood are Jewish. Now then, is that a bad thing? There is a magazine I'm sure you're familiar with called Emerge. Emerge is a magazine that had the picture of Clarence Thomas on the cover, holding a lantern that said, Clarence, Uncle Thomas, lawn jockey to the far right. Well, that magazine had an article about Jewish influence in America. They discovered something very interesting. Jews were the least racist group in America, including blacks. The following questions were asked in this Emerge magazine article, and some of you may actually be interested in reading it. It's in September 1994. I urge you to take a look at it. The following statements were asked of the general population and were asked of Jews.
5 minutes, Larry.
Okay. Blacks complain too much about racism. 62% of the American people said yes. 47% of Jews said yes. Blacks stick to themselves. 58% of the general public said yes. 42% of Jews said yes. Blacks prefer welfare. 35% of the American public said yes. 19% of Jews agreed with that. Blacks are less ambitious. 29% of the general public said yes. 19% of Jews said yes to that. Blacks are too loud and pushy. 27% of the American public said yes to that. 13% of Jews said yes. Blacks are not hardworking. 20% of the American people said yes. Only 14% of Jews agreed with that. Blacks are not as honest. 15% of the American people said yes. Only 9% of Jews said yes. Blacks have less native intelligence. You know, people have paid $15 to hear Mr. Cokley and myself debate, and I would appreciate it if you allow me to finish. Because I know you intend to give Mr. Cokley some respect, and I hope you'll do likewise with me. You know, just as a thought, I don't expect to change very many people's minds here. I really don't. But I know there's some young people here. I see some young people out here. And I'm really talking to you. Because some of the older people are angry. and are unwilling to listen to information. I've given you a lot of information. Whether you like it or not, you can get on the internet and look it up for yourself. The Time magazine recently did a study, and they asked black adults whether racism was a major problem in America, and the overwhelming numbers said yes. They also asked the same question of black teens. And the majority of black teens also said yes. However, they asked a follow-up question to the black teens. And they said, though, in your own personal lives, is racism a major factor, a small factor, or no factor? And nearly 90% of the black teens said racism was little or no factor in their own lives. So I'm talking to you. Guild, the Screen Actors Guild, The Screen Actors Guild, 1996, reported that 12% of all film and TV jobs went to blacks. That is the same percentage of population in blacks. Screen Directors Guild, 1995, 3.9% of all the jobs went to black directors. 1996, 5.2%, which is a substantial rise in just 1 year. Commercials. Screen Actors Guild reports that Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans, and blacks get 21% of all the commercial jobs. Blacks get, of all commercial jobs, approximately 12%. And a study by Minorities Markets Alert, a New York City newsletter that tracks the extent to which minorities get commercials, reported in 1995 that black faces appeared in nearly 40% of the commercials in New York, and the trend is similar nationwide. Black hiring is up at the actor level. Black hiring is up at the director level. Black hiring is up at the producer level. I just went down to my mailbox before this debate. This is the cover of Ebony magazine. Oprah, Debbie, Whitney, Tracy sparkle in the year of black women producers. Read the article and you'll find out that black women producers are coming and coming strong. Hollywood is not racist. Hollywood is rough, it is tough, and if you are unprepared to struggle, if you are unprepared to get rejection, then you should perhaps consider selling shoes. It is a tough, tough business, but if you've got vision and you're willing to work hard and you're willing to persevere, you can make it, and people are doing it every single day. Thank you very much.
Time. Okay. That was an interesting perspective. One thing we both agree with is that America is great in as much as it lets you say what you want to say. And everybody have a right to agree or disagree. And it don't necessarily mean it's true. All right. At this point, Brother Cokley been shuffling papers for about a half hour. So we ought to be about ready. I'm going to give him time to get to his spot. That way, this is going to be your spot. Okay, brothers and sisters, I introduce to you Brother Steve Cokley.
She's a victim. I, I appreciate Brother Malik for hosting his second great debate. I believe, that's what I get, John. I believe in the concept of debating ideas and concepts before people who have not yet made up their mind. And I watched that debate between Brother Collard and Anthony Hilder. It was some. And others will watch the debate today. I, like you, are awfully surprised that Brother was even coming tonight. I think for many hours we spent time. Yeah, that's true. That's true. We spent many hours discussing whether he would actually show up or not. But that's good. You and I got to debate too on Crossfire, didn't we? And I whipped your ass, didn't I? Yes, I did. I'm sorry. But that's all right. That's all right. But you know what? Even more than that, I'm sorry to have used him to get you jacked up. I'm sorry to have used him to get you jacked up, because you know he would be good for some excitement and some laughing, because he's that type of guy. No, that's true. That's true. But I also want you to remember that he was in Riverside the day Khalid Muhammad got shot at, too. No. Listen, hey, it's coming. Listen up. And also, his name was right over Julius Butler in the book that revealed he was an informant, too. You know that? But anyway, all right. Is Hollywood racist? Let's ask Tarzan movies. Let's ask cowboys and Indians movies. Huh? Was that fair stuff? Did those things seem to represent the values of a certain group of people who were into colonizing land that didn't belong to them? Was there racism and then there was media, or was there media and then there was racism? There was racism. The greatest PR man in the history of the world was Benjamin Franklin, who took a group of cutthroat whites and scrubbed them up and cleaned them up and made it look like they ran a democracy. But while they were doing those movies on the Apache Nation and Geronimo and the Seminoles and these other things, not a one of them could vote. There was no massive turnout of the Apache Nation in the 1812 election. What was the turnout of the African people in the 1842 election? What was even the turnout of white women in 1890, 1910, 1920? Rosa Parks didn't even come till 57. Well, shit, if Hollywood was so straight, how come the rest of white America was so off to the side? Now, originally, I thought we were going to do 45-minute segments, and obviously, Larry, you saw now, you probably had enough for 45 minutes. You could have done 45. It's nothing to be afraid of. And there's nothing wrong with being here all night. How you doing, Bob? And there's nothing wrong with all of that. But I had a couple of files that I brought that I wanted to share with you. I got a nice thick Larry Elder file over there. I don't think I'm going to need that. I think I pulled everything you had off the internet. I pulled everything Horowitz had. I got a Horowitz file over here because Horowitz is a very interesting guy and has a lot to do with why he's willing to be here, because the people who finance that type of thing are into penetration. Oh, stop. Tomorrow, Disney will reshow Pocahontas. But was Pocahontas a racist movie? You damn right it was. The little daughter of the original people fell in love with a foreigner while the other white men sang "Savages, Savages." My little African daughter came up to me and said, "Daddy, we will never have a Pocahontas in our neighborhood. She only 5 years old." So I thank Disney for making it plain. But Disney is doing Pocahontas' damn self, because if you go to Harlem and see something called Harlem, USA, you will see that while Disney's playing Pocahontas in the public, they're being Pocahontas up in Harlem. I went to Harlem to fight against Time Warner and Disney from penetrating 125th Street for what they're calling Harlem Renaissance Part 2. Harlem Renaissance Part 1 was a diversion from the penetration and street power of Marcus Garvey. So it isn't just that a movie is a movie or an industry is about employment. Everyone that's in the media have values that they are first responsible for protecting, and then they can make a movie. White men who do not toe the line of white supremacy in the way they believe it is appropriate, like Borsky or Milliken, are punished and set down and spanked in the butt. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, these people didn't just jump off the planet, they got pushed out the planet. Colin Powell, who spent a lot of time going around the country saying how it wasn't no conspiracy, but when he was the #1 candidate for president, he backed down because his wife made him aware of the forces that will fuck you up in America if you ain't on the list. So why would a group of white men take the pyramid and all CNI and put on the top of the dollar bill? Because you see, they still bowing to the king and the queen today. And even when the little white woman dipped over on the black side, you saw racism. You know that's so. You know they whack. That's not tonight's subject. But you understand the principle. Still today, check. All right, okay. Hold on. Now, you know DreamWorks got a new movie coming out called The Prince of Egypt. A white man. Who made the movie Stargate that dehumanized the builders of the pyramids. Yeah, they did that. All right. Gorillas in the Mist out of Africa. Cecil B. DeMille's the Mason of Hollywood, who did the 10 Commandments. Pharaoh, Yul Brynner. Moses, Charlton Heston. If Cecil B. DeMille didn't get the story wrong, you think that thing would be on every Easter? That's right, it did. It fit like Birth of a Nation. And the book is How the Jews Invented Hollywood. That's the name of the book, How They Invented Hollywood. Now, there's some things about the industry that I need you to understand, and I'm actually so glad that he helped bring all of you to me. In fact, stop. Now, we ain't got time for applause. I ain't into that juice. I really got some. I got more than enough to use, and we don't have enough time to use it. But in the spirit of Hollywood are many divisions and industries that impact even whether there is a movie or not. The investment banking community, the Lazar Ferrezes, the Shearson Lehman American Expresses. These investment banking companies, Goldman Sachs, Dillon Reed, decide before a movie leaves a piece of paper. All of them are white. Now, maybe there's some black spirit in them that decide they'll be fair and open. Investment banking companies have to deal with the investment bond raters, the Standard & Poor's and the Moody's. They rate the bonds that allow the companies to float the paper to make the movies. They're all white too. The insurance companies, you know any big black insurance company backing up movies? Go ask Spike Lee and many of these others about the question of bonding and insurance, and every one of them will admit to you a struggle that is unique to them, not other whites. What about the accounting firms that can ruin you on a bad subtraction and an addition? Hey, sister. How about the advertising agencies? I personally know, my mama worked at J. Walter Thompson Hill and Norton, one of the largest advertising companies in the world. And I had to go up in there with my brothers and free my mama from some real racist shit up in there. And we jacked that company down. They were headquartered in, the Chicago division was in the John Hancock building. We pulled down them stats of employment. They even had a black personnel director who knew how to hire all white people. And when a conflict came, he knew how to do things the white way. But I personally know about J. Walter Thompson and their racism, and we won our way through them. I personally know about CBS Records and racism and Public Enemy. I was personally involved in the exorcism of Professor Griff from Public Enemy over the question of domination in the record business. But Public Enemy didn't stick with me, and eventually, as they went with the whites, they broke down. See, actually, I think Larry Elder has really faked out ABC and Disney and stuff today. I actually think he faked them out because actually I know he knows that there's racism even in his own company. Hold it now, stop that. I believe at the ABC station in New York, where you ought to be at, you be syndicated, you ought to be there. Disney's coming there. But they didn't put you on, did they? Stop! I believe they put your two competitors on, didn't they? See, because what he's telling you is that, you know those two white guys right here that on the radio, goofy white guys, what's their name? What's their name? What? John and Ken, right? Listen to me now. John and Ken are not even on KABC, are they? But in New York they are, in place of him. Oh, stop now. Stop now. How do you think he feels here defending Hollywood while behind his back, Hollywood does the white thing? Maybe he's so pissed off about that he decided to come here tonight. If you listen to his story, he kind of said two things. Hey, you know, this thing is really racist. And a little later on, he went, you know, it really ain't. You know, that reminded us of Jesse Jackson when we pressed him about being up in the Council on Foreign Relations. He said, I never really been to a meeting, but I spoke at some of them. Name me the #1 black movie reviewer. In fact, I think Ebert married to a black woman. That's about as close as it get. I think that's about as close as it get. And did not the CIA drug story show the real hunky of the white press? Did not the CIA drug story bring out the fact that media cannot deal with truth, it must deal with social control? The LA Times, the Chandler family, the Cox family, the Sulzbergers of the New York Times, the Graham family of the Washington Post and Newsweek, each and every one of these honkies have fought me every day since I emerged, because they know if I don't know one thing in my time I get to share with you, that we spend each and every moment describing the bestiality of these corporate whites, even in the media, and in the Federal Reserve, and in the insurance, and in education, and in government, and in law, and in corporate, and in industry. They know we are the uncompromising force at something that has basically been distracted from the masses of the people. Why don't the people know about the Council on Foreign Relations? Why don't, look here, listen now, the Council on Foreign Relations magazine, Foreign Affairs, recently did a story entitled Radio Intervention. It was a massive move. It said that if in Rwanda we had acted fast enough and cut off the radio when they called kill the traitors, and they went out and killed them. That's how they got the country. In fact, that's how you'll get this country. Oh, stop now, because you got to remember, what was the formula that got Mandela out of jail? Wasn't that they dropped the charges. It was oncoming revolution. All right? And it's on, but it's on. I ain't here to debate whether the Hollywood is in the racism. I'm here to tell you we tearing Hollywood ass up with the rest of white supremacy. That's our goal. It's not about are they that. Shit, we know that. But it's about the motion. What about the power of A.C. Nielsen? They're a corporation out of Chicago who rate the stories that always seem to come out with the black family stories as being lower rated, because even the people who got the boxes are white. What about buffoonery in the media? Did they ever finance buffoonery? Martin and all the, you could call out every goofy show there was. They have all, there's not a decent black man in media. Every black man looks shiftless, and even Cosby backs up behind his wives and all of his shows to show that even if he's a doctor or a lawyer, he cannot be a front-walking black man. Those images are responsible for sowing the seeds of inferiority in our children. The directors are white, the pitch people are white. Hey, do you know that in advertising, you need to know who the top advertisers are, like on TV, Burger King and McDonald's, and these dominant buyers of advertisers tend to have news about them dissipate. They can kind of buy a story. Now, I work for a mayor. I know I can crush many stories. I know about stories and story crushing and story creation. You can manipulate the media if you have the leverage with them. You have a government, you got the leverage. But they give commissions to, especially the white advertising companies, of 15% for buying the time and making the commercial. They kind of give the guy who needs the commercial production and the time on the media all in one package. Better than you could get if you walked up there by yourself. You pay double the money. It's kind of like a ritual, a united thing. They kind of got a little secret society going back there. They got book scouts, pitch people, trackers. All of them are primarily white. Oh, let's see here. All right. That Masonic dollar bill. Here I have a book here called The Masons. The Masons Who Helped Shape Their Nation. It say our nation, but I couldn't say that. It's a book. And on this book is a picture of a white guy in a Masonic hat right here. And I wanted to see it. Hey, look. I'm in the conversions. I got a black Rhodes Scholar. I stood him up in Florida. He repudiated Cecil Rhodes, and I said, give me some evidence of you coming across. He gave me the register of every Rhodes Scholar since 1903. He is a conversion. We in the conversion. Hey, listen, in the last days, you don't know who might be the trick under the cover. And I warn white people today that it won't be long before you spank him hard enough and he'll be down here for free, trying to tell all the things they told him when they thought he was on that side. But also I want to remind him as a brother to go watch that movie Geronimo, where they empowered a man of his own ethnic group to go up in the mountains and get Geronimo. And when they brought Geronimo down and they were going to put him on the train to take him to Florida, they took and lined up all the people who helped them reduce the tribe to the train, and they stood them up and they thanked them all. Then they walked out in the audience and snatched the guns out of their hands and said, get your ass on the train with Geronimo. So listen up. Let's not wait until the day the train comes for him to recognize that when we're dealing in a skin game, everybody might not know that's Larry Elder and might throw you on there with the rest of us. But this is Jack Warner here in a Masonic hat, and Jack Warner was the Grand Master Mason of Hollywood. And he then, as Warner Brothers, ran out and became the first company to start putting people in blackface. What was blackface a positive reflection of African people? In fact, I think a guy up here, I got one book up here of a guy who did a piece on Disney, the historical context of Disney and Mickey Mouse and all the rest of them, called Disney's Plantation. He's a professor. It's a very powerful book, The Representation of Black Culture. And Disneyland, if you go to Disneyland, I swear to God, everything up there black is evil and sinister. Everything in Disneyland is evil and sinister that's black. For real, deep black. It's sinister. Every little game they play. In conclusion, Walt Disney, as much as anyone else in the entertainment industry, used distortion of black images to perpetrate his ambition. Mickey, the subliminal minister, Captain EO, and Uncle Remus, and the perpetual Sambos were used as puppets, placating the fears activated in his political unconsciousness. Disney recreated history to satisfy his disdain for blacks. But Roy Disney is on the page next to Jack Warner as one of the master masons of Hollywood. But those masons who founded this country were anti-black. That's why they could put the pyramid on the dollar bill and never been to Kemet. Because they were stealers, colonists, takers of things. So they didn't mind using a symbol that didn't belong to them and kept that symbol secret, the Great Seal. That side of the Great Seal was kept secret until the 1930s because they didn't want everyone to know that the base of this society was that of a secret society. The Luce family at Time, and I got a bunch of transparencies. I could throw it up there, but I don't want to run out of time. I'm really got more stuff than we could use. But the Luce family of Time magazine, he's Skull and Bones man. Luce man, Skull and Bones man. Rhodes Scholars all up in the history of the New York Times. Cecil Rhodes. It's Cecil Rhodes' secret society that's the dominant interest in the society today. The Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberger Group, the Council on Foreign Relations. These are remnants of a secret society. And you know what's deep? I showed my friends today, Larry, that some of the things you all advocate about, welfare rights and other things, and the elimination of welfare and limited government without social disruption, is the number 4 thing on the Trilateral Commission position paper on how to manage the world for the next 50 years. Is a position similar to his, but on the surface, this looked like right side with the right to speak. Horowitz was on the left and on the right, kind of like that LaRoche double agent on the left and on the right. When they raised $500,000 to save Larry Elder, if you saw anything they said about it, they said this is even deeper than Larry Elder. This is about white people and black people resisting colonial thinking. They made that clear that there was more at stake than a damn radio show. No, really, it's bigger than him. And everything history has ever showed us that when they finished with him. Now, you didn't have Greenspan come here. You didn't have the CIA director come here. You had Bush here, Clinton here, so-called Prince Charles here. What is it about you that commands such psychological operations attention? This is about psychological operations, about how people with no constituency have a disproportionate amount of time to express views that they hope neutralize deeper viewpoints. And all I say is that on some day, and it will happen, that they will spank him in a way that will make him want to be back with you. Hey, OJ, you can count them up. They'll be coming down. Listen up. Could you imagine him and OJ on the same team? It's possible. If we know white supremacy, it's possible. They be chained together like one of the movies, the Sidney Poitier and the other guy. They running, they in chains together. They chains and freedom with these two, freedom. In America, anything is possible. Dealing with poverty in the post-welfare state societies, it follows that the danger of a black backlash against globalization, and that is the crucial domestic task for the industrialized democracies in dealing with the most deep-rooted potential source of that backlash, namely poverty. See, and the approach of feeding welfare is now discredited. It means that the public finances can no longer afford existing levels of entitlement. One of the toughest tasks of government all over the world is to cut welfare spending. Yet too often it's being done purely to save money rather than to adjust priorities and expectations. However much spending is cut, the problems to which the welfare state were a solution will remain: poverty, an underclass, insecurity in old age, gross inequality in health provisions. New solutions will have to be found. So if you're Rockefeller left or you're Rockefeller right, are you still Rockefeller? David Horowitz wrote a book on Rockefeller that was one of the sweetest books on Rockefeller ever written. And in that book, he had secret access to the archives of the Rockefeller family that is unprecedented in the history of the Rockefeller family. Unprecedented. And he goes from left to tricking on the Panthers to the right to tricking on us. And the reason I call him out, and also as well, who is the one black person on the board of Disney? You know? I believe it's Sidney Poitier, am I correct? You know? No, not really. It's not cool. It's Sidney Poitier. I got the list up here. I ain't trying to be funny. No, really, it wasn't even a joke. It's not a joke, but it's important. Sidney Poitier is the only black on the board of Disney that's important. But there's the chairman emeritus of Philip Morris, the cigarette people, who for years lied about their killer cigarettes and had paid enough advertisement to get the media never to catch them until one little white man took and dropped through a transit, and the head of the Federal Trade Commission, a white man named Kessler, picked up the secret envelope and actually followed up all the information and actually now has begun to get these cigarette companies to tell the truth that yes, we did manipulate tobacco, and put things in it that made you crave it, and yes, we lied about it, and yes, we targeted your children even though they were underage. And yes, we finance movies and we finance books and we do a lot of other things. Yes, these are our values. It's very important that it be on that level. Harold Washington, what about the media and black politicians? Harold Washington was constantly under attack by the white media. In Maryland, they just used the media, the Washington Post, to knock out Larry Young, the most powerful man in the Senate of Maryland. In Florida, they just knocked out the black Speaker of the House, using the media to set the climate to make it possible to go in there and wipe these people out. What about the media and the assassination of Martin King? Still today, they're looking for the killers, but it was the media that manipulated the dialogue. The man from the New York Times, Caldwell Black, say, hey, we heard a loud boom. We saw it from the bushes, but the New York Times wouldn't let it go down like that. The media versus the Black Panthers, the media versus the Nation of Islam. You tell me the media's been fair to Minister Farrakhan? I was there when the so-called gutter religion remark was made, and it is just that, so-called. Well, now, listen, don't you even fall for it. I'll accuse you of a conspiracy to take my time. Recently, Mobile Oil financed a 6-hour PBS special on Cecil Rhodes. The reason I bring up Cecil Rhodes again is because his secret society is dominating the day. On the board of the Council on Foreign Relations are many of the executives of the media company. But the Cecil Rhodes program, which was produced by Mobile Oil, didn't make him look like Adolf Hitler. Why is it that Cecil Rhodes, Irv, don't look like Adolf Hitler when in fact he did far more against people of color than Adolf Hitler was ever able to do? I'm making a point that if a white guy does something the right way, in fact, the PBS special, and I don't know how many of you all saw it, was really about how a homosexual colonized Africa. That's really what it was about. It was about promoting the concept that even a homosexual could take Africa because Africans handed him a thing, give me all your land. Yeah, he signs it, he don't even know what it says. They bought New York for $24 in the beads, and the so-called Indios people had no need for $24. The concept that you could put trickery in front of the people to lessen their apprehensions against a program for world control. You see, in spite of all of this, the media is responsible for setting the climate that makes the program for world control possible, and that program is about white supremacy. He mentioned the Chicago Tribune earlier, which is one of the most racist papers in this country. Having been victimized by the Tribune, the interesting thing about its so-called fairness is to walk in the lobby of the Chicago Tribune, and in the middle of the lobby is a circle within a circle, which is the format of the secret society of Cecil Rhodes. But in the floor is a saying from John Ruskin.
5 minutes, 5 minutes.
John Ruskin, 5 and 5 is 10. John Ruskin, ain't 5 and 5 10? All right, check. Let me see. All right, okay, listen up, listen up. And in that inscription from John Ruskin, who was the inspiration for Cecil Rhodes to colonize Africa, it says, never mind what techniques we use to take this here planet in the name of English-speaking people. Our children will not question our methods. They will only thank us for completing the task. When Columbus in 1992, they tried to play up the big Columbus thing, and in Chicago, they were going to have the World's Fair. Harold Washington and Cokley and a lot of other people stopped the 1992 World's Fair from coming to Chicago to celebrate Columbus, as they had done in 1892 in Chicago, the land that made the University of Chicago. In fact, even then, they had Colored People's Day, because only one day could colored people go to the World's Fair, the way they had set it up. But in the spirit of Christopher Columbus, we understand that the media is deeply responsible for relaying those things. And I heard him earlier mention Star Wars. There goes that imagery of black again, the dark, evil Darth Vader. It's the black man with a black voice even. Hey, no question. Up here, I have a lot of things about the breakdown of Disney. Murdoch, one of the most racist men in America, Rupert Murdoch, controls the Fox. He's buying everything. Hey, how about in the media, if y'all saw that Motown special a couple weeks ago, you saw how Berry Gordy, and I heard him mention Diana Ross, and he surely was pissed at her. But Berry Gordy was forced to sell Motown for $65 million. But how much did the next white man buy it for after he turned it over? $365 million, yes, sir. That's what you call, yeah, it's worth something, but if we don't want you to have it, we won't give it to you. If this America's about free speech, then Mr. Elder, you would have been the first one in line fighting for O.J. Simpson's right to buy a commercial. Hold it now, stop now. I'm not talking about whether he was guilty or not. I'm not talking about what his values are, because part of his problem started when he got over there with white women. No, listen now, listen. Oh! But when a man with money can't buy a commercial in America, even if his values don't agree with those who sell it, that is a paramount moment in racism and white supremacy, because money, or the fair capitalistic way in so-called America, should have allowed him to even buy it, to give his view. And when he was on CNN, I remember he couldn't even hold up the phone number. They blotted it out in front of him, and the Turner's supposed to be one of the fairest of them all. Something is very wrong there, and it isn't O.J. because it's him today. Could be me or you tomorrow. It really could. No, really, it really could. Well, I'm going to sit down, and I see Disney stock up 18%. Company's doing good. Saw they had a little protest at the annual meeting in Kansas City. 35% of the stockholders voted against the company. 65-35 is awfully unusual equation for a stock protest. But Disney is being suggested that its corporate directors are all tied and loyal to Michael Eisner. Now, Michael Eisner had a heart attack. His buddy died in a plane crash. Other friends of his been run out of the company. These honkies are fighting for the right to be the ones to kill the African people. They're
1
fighting
minute.
for the right.
1 minute.
They're fighting
And that's
for
not 2 minutes.
Okay, that's right. We didn't do 1 and 1, right? All right, we got 1 minute. United Nations reassessed its global role. Well, if the United Nations, the AMA, the Federal Reserve, and all those things were founded by a particular family, they were founded by a particular family. There's Uncle Cecil John Rhodes. His secret society is best reflected by the Council on Foreign Relations. Even in the Council on Foreign Relations, when you look to the primary donors, and you see Katharine Graham, who was on the Global 2000, Gerald Levin and Time Warner, David Rockefeller, when you look and see the media people, hey, and what about that Mellon family? See, I always talk against those major families, but that boy, Covert Action Magazine, got a good story out about how, and it's in Covert Action because it deals with the intelligence community, about how that center for
Time.
And And I wanted to hear that point, too.
No, you didn't, because you can't tell time.
I didn't want to be accused of in Lamert Park.
Why not?
All right, Brother Steve, have a seat. It's time for round two. Seems like there's going to be a lot of rebutting going on.
Or what?
About ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, the second round is 15 minutes. Rebuttal, Larry Elder.
Let me make an attempt to unravel some of that. Mr. Cokley, I am so impressed you're so concerned about my career. I'm a little confused, though. I thought I was a Trojan horse, somebody hired by the white man to advance the white man's interests, yet you're complaining that I'm not on WABC in New York. I'm a little confused.
Yep, okay.
I would have thought it would have been just the opposite. Since I'm carrying the spear for the defense of a bigoted system, I would have thought that I would have been in New York and by now. All right. Now, you've outlined a conspiracy. You've talked about how the system oppresses blacks. You've talked about how the movies depict blacks in negative images, how the movies have robbed black people of a sense of self-esteem. Tell me something, Mr. Cokley. Why do you live here in this country? Why not? I look at the large numbers of people. I look at the large numbers of people from third world countries coming here. I look at the Mariel boat lift from Cuba, all the people coming here. I don't see the parade of people going back. I don't see the parade of people going to Cuba. I don't see the parade of people going to Nigeria. I don't see the parade of people going to the Bahamas. There must be something about this country that's keeping 32 million black people here. You have outlined a conspiracy of Hollywood to oppress the ambitions of talented black people. I have a couple of questions. Johnny Cochran, during the O.J. Simpson case, likened Mark Fuhrman to Adolf Hitler. A number of Jews were upset about that. A number of Jews were upset about that. A lot of people felt that Johnny Cochran used the race card to free a man who had killed two people. Yet Johnny Cochran now has a television show on Court TV, a national show with sponsors. Now it seems to me if there were this conspiracy on the part of the media to oppress people who do not have views and values similar to their own, I am astounded that Mr. Cochran could even conceive of having a national television show, let alone having one. Jesse Jackson. Mr. Cokley has mentioned that Colin Powell was dissuaded from running for president by his wife, who feared the conspiracy. Interesting how Reverend Jackson was able to run both in 1984 and in 1988 despite the conspiracy. Jesse Jackson, you might recall, referred to Jews as Jaime and New York as Jaimetown. Yet Reverend Jackson now has a television show on CNN owned by Time Warner, a company that you've just criticized. Interesting how the conspiracy seems to have big holes in it. You have talked about me as a victim. I appreciate your concern for my welfare, Mr. Cokley. Tavis Smiley, who many of you know, once publicly called my show hate radio. And when someone called the show and said, I am one of those who has been writing letters to your sponsors to get your sponsors to stop advertising on your show, Mr. Smiley said, and I quote, and I love you for it, end of quote. Mr. Smiley has just now signed a 6-year deal with ABC Radio Network along with Tom Joyner to have their show syndicated nationally, despite the fact that he referred to my show, Tavis Smiley, as hate radio. There must be some glaring holes in the conspiracy, Mr. Cokley. You also have said that the movies have created a sense of inferiority in our people. I'm sorry that the evidence does not support your statement. The American Association of University Women just did a study, and many other studies have been done that show black boys have, in fact, more self-esteem, more pride, more self-respect than do white boys. Psychology Today had an article. Psychology Today had an article that said the same thing about black teenage girls. They were more proud, had more respect, had more sense of self-worth than did white teenage girls. So if there is this conspiracy, it is a woeful failure. You have talked about the buffoonish sitcoms on television, and you and I agree, Mr. Cokley. Many of the sitcoms on television are, in fact, buffoonish. And my recommendation to all the blacks who watch these shows, stop watching them. You stop watching them, you won't get them anymore. 25% of the ticket sales for movies in this country are purchased by black people. If you don't like what's on the screen, don't go. In 1996, 5 of the top 10 movies, the ones that grossed the greatest amount of money, either had a black lead star or a black co-star, including Will Smith, Independence Day, one of the most successful films ever made. If there is a conspiracy, there are some huge holes in it. And you mentioned Nelson Mandela, and I'm happy you did, Mr. Cokley, because Nelson Mandela, as many of you know, was in prison for 27 years. He was beaten. He was refused visits by his family. He was denied food. He was denied water. And when he got out, he became president of South Africa, a multi-ethnic nation, a nation which has no private sector affirmative action. And Nelson Mandela said, many people wonder why, Mr. Mandela, you are not angry, why you have no antagonism, why you have no hostility. And he said, because I'm a man of hope. I'm a man of prayer. I'm a man who believes that if you try to believe the best in people, they can and will rise to the occasion. If anybody had a right to be bitter, to be angry, it was Nelson Mandela, and he is not. And finally, I am astounded, Mr. Cokley, that you believe in some sort of coordinated, organized conspiracy. I got news for you. White people ain't that smart. And to suggest that there's some sort of meeting every Friday downtown at the Federal Building where all of the executives of television and all the newspaper editors and all of the magazine editors and all the executives in film studios all get together to figure out how to hold the black man down is paranoia, and it consigns a kind of powerfulness to whites that they do not have, and it consigns yourself a powerlessness, all out of proportion with reality. I have a friend who just graduated a few years ago from USC Film School. There were 30 other people who graduated. She just finished financing her film. I gave her some money to do it. And I said, of the grads in your class, the 30 grads, how many of them wanted to make a movie? She said, why, everybody. That's why we went to film school. We all wanted to make films. I said, how many have in fact made a film? She said, one, me. Many of them were friends and relatives of people in Hollywood. Most of them were white. And the point is, it is a difficult, difficult process. And if you aren't willing, as I said earlier, to beg, to borrow, to steal, to sacrifice, to suffer, it's not going to happen. But it is a process for everybody. I belonged to a club in Cleveland a few years ago, and there was a black man who taught me how to shoot pool a lot better than I shot before. And one day during the Jesse Jackson campaign for president, he said, "Larry, what do you think of the prospects for president for our Reverend Jesse Jackson?" Now, I wasn't quite sure how to respond to that because he wasn't my candidate. And I said, you know, because of the way he said it, I knew he supported him. I didn't want to offend him. I wanted to maintain our friendship, and this wasn't about politics. And so I said, well, you know, I just don't think he's qualified. And he said, much to my surprise, "Larry, neither do I. Reverend Jackson is in the we shall overcome business. And you know what? We done overcome." So, Mr. Cokley, I think the difference between the two of us is one of us thinks of himself as a victor, and one of us thinks of himself as a victim. I believe in the work ethic. I believe in making sure that we take back our schools, which are failing our children. I believe that we should call off the war on drugs, which is ensnaring many of our young black men behind bars for a useless war that is not working. I believe that the welfare state has created an epidemic of dependency and illegitimacy that Mr. Farrakhan has spoken out against. And I believe affirmative action says, I can't make it on my own. I need a boost. I'm inferior, something Minister Farrakhan also opposes. So I think ultimately one's success or failure in life is determined by one's own vision of oneself.
5 minutes.
And one's own sense of pride. Did anybody see that arts and entertainment special the other day on William Bojangles Robinson? Anybody see that? It's a man who was born 13 years after slavery, who learned how to dance by himself, danced for whites, was in minstrel shows. In those days, there was something called the two-colored rule. If you were performing before a predominantly white audience and you were black, there had to be at least 2 black performers on the stage at any given time. Why? The feeling was that a black performer wasn't sufficiently gifted to entertain whites by himself. Bojangles sought to break the two-colored rule, and he was successful in doing so. He then began wearing top hats and tails in his act, something that had never been done before, because he had a sense of pride. Hollywood called. Hollywood called him. Comes out to Hollywood and starts playing menial roles as waiters, as butlers, danced with Shirley Temple. He longed for a role where he could wear a tux and